The storm was screaming around us when I saw it. Lightning split the sky for just a moment, casting the rig in stark white against the endless black ocean. And there it was, the nest. It pulsed. It moved. A writhing liquid mass that glistened like oil and mud, clinging to the steel walls of the engineering deck. The shape of it was wrong, bulging with hints of human limbs, broken faces, and bones trapped inside the sludge. I swear to God it was breathing. And then it opened an eye. A single, shining, lidless orb floated up out of the sludge and fixed on us. That was the last thing Sergeant Morales saw before the creature reached out, faster than anything that wet and heavy should have been able to move, and pulled him, screaming, into the black mass. I remember shouting, firing, the stutter of rifle fire echoing off steel walls as my shots cut straight through, spraying droplets of thick fluid that only knitted itself back together. I remember the way the thing sounded, not like an animal, but like 100 whispers bubbling up from drowning throats. And I remember knowing, with a certainty that settled in my bones, that we were never supposed to be here. That thing had been waiting. 12 hours earlier, the sky was calm, the sea deceptively smooth, and our squad was inbound to the Black Tide rig, a place where 80 men and women had vanished without a trace. The Coast Guard had already tried to investigate. Their helicopter still sat on the landing pad, but no one had ever reported back. The company wanted the rig shut down before the storm hit. The military wanted answers. And me, I just wanted to make it home alive. The storm was still hours away when our chopper banked low over the Gulf. From the air, the sea looked like a rolling sheet of black glass, but the horizon was already bruising with thick clouds. The pilot didn't need to say it. We all felt the storm coming, pressing at our nerves. I pressed my forehead to the window and got my first glimpse of the Black Tide rig. It rose from the ocean like a dying thing, a sprawl of steel girders, pipes, and platforms looming in the middle of nowhere. Half the lights still burned, pale and flickering against the encroaching dark. A red beacon light pulsed slowly from the top mast, but there was no movement, no sign of life. Then I saw it, the Coast Guard helicopter, sitting neatly on the landing pad like it had just arrived. But its doors were open, its rotors motionless, abandoned. The pilot's voice crackled in our comms. "Touchdown in 2 minutes, wind's picking up, make it quick in there." No one answered. We were too busy staring at the rig, at the emptiness of it. Sergeant Morales, our squad leader, broke the silence. "All right, listen up. Rules are simple. We move in pairs. We sweep the rig from top down. Company engineers stick close. We don't need anyone wandering off. We keep radio contact open at all times. Got it?" We all gave curt nods. Even the 3 company men, dressed in bright orange safety gear, nodded nervously. They weren't soldiers. They were here to shut down equipment, to protect assets, as they put it. But I saw the way their eyes lingered on the storm clouds. They were scared. Maybe more scared than we were. The chopper set down with a metallic thud on the rig's landing pad. As the rotors wound down, silence rolled over us. Not true silence. There was the constant groan of metal shifting, the deep thrum of machinery somewhere below, and the faint slap of waves against the supports. But it felt silent, empty. We disembarked in a staggered line, boots clanging against the steel. The air smelled like salt, oil, and something else, something foul, like brackish water and wet earth. The Coast Guard helicopter was only 20 feet away. Morales signaled for us to check it. I approached with Corporal Hayes. The cockpit was empty, the radios smashed. One of the harnesses dangled loose, slick with something that looked like mud, but clung in thick strands when I touched it with my glove. "Where the hell is the crew?" Hayes muttered. I didn't answer. I didn't want to. Morales called us to regroup and we filed toward the main door leading inside the rig. The storm wind tugged at our gear as if urging us to hurry, to get it over with. The door was unlocked. Rust squealed as we pushed it open. Inside was dim, lit only by flickering fluorescent strips that hummed overhead. The smell was stronger in here, like rot that had seeped into steel. We moved in. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with pipes, valves, and peeling paint. The floor was slick underfoot as though water had seeped through, but it wasn't water. It was thicker, darker, leaving faint smears under our boots. "Jesus," one of the company men whispered. Morales cut him off sharply. "Eyes forward. Stay focused." We swept the first section in silence. Mess hall, quarters, offices, all empty, but not abandoned. Plates of half-eaten food sat on tables, coffee cups half full, a game of cards scattered mid-play. In one cabin, the shower was still running, water pooling at our feet. It was like they had just gotten up and walked away. "Not a damn body," Hayes muttered. He was trying to sound annoyed, but his voice was too tight. We moved deeper, flashlights cutting through the dim corridors, radios crackling occasionally with static. But no voices answered when Morales hailed the missing crew. Only silence. I kept waiting to hear something. Footsteps, breathing, anything that would explain where 80 men and women had gone. But there was nothing. Just that faint smell of wet earth that seemed to follow us through the corridors. When we reached the recreation room, I froze. A Coast Guard helmet sat on the couch. The visor was smeared with that same mud-like substance, dried in streaks that almost looked like handprints. And for the first time, I realized the silence wasn't just absence. It was waiting. The Coast Guard helmet sat there on the couch like someone had left it 5 minutes ago. Morales picked it up with 2 fingers, turned it over, and swore under his breath. "Same as the chopper," he muttered. "What the hell is this stuff?" Up close, the smears looked like mud, but clung like tar. Thick and stringy, it stretched slightly when Morales pulled at it before snapping back, leaving a tacky residue on his glove. One of the company men, Alvarez, I think his name was, recoiled. "I told you something went wrong with the drill. This is coming up from the seabed. It's contamination, biohazard." Morales shot him a glare. "Then why didn't your people report it? Why didn't they call it in before vanishing?" Alvarez had no answer. He just pulled his hard hat lower and looked away. We pressed on. The deeper we went, the more wrong everything felt. Crew quarters still had open lockers, clothes hung half pulled out. A duffel bag sat on a bunk, unzipped, like someone was halfway through packing. The cafeteria was worse. Plates still sat on trays. A sandwich, half eaten, had gone moldy. A pot of coffee burned itself into sludge on the hot plate. One tray lay overturned on the floor, its food smeared and rotted. No bodies, no signs of panic. Just absence. Hayes kicked a chair, sending it clattering. "This is bullshit. 80 people don't just vanish." The sound echoed too loud in the stillness. Everyone flinched. We moved into the operations wing, our boots squeaking faintly on slick floors. Pipes groaned overhead. The whole rig seemed to creak, almost like it was breathing with the ocean swell. And then a noise. Faint, wet. A dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across steel. We froze, weapons raised. The sound came from deeper in the rig, beyond the sealed door to the engineering decks. Then it stopped. The silence afterward was somehow worse. Morales gestured sharply. "We'll come back to that. Top-down sweep, remember? Engineering last." No one argued. Not yet. We swept through the medical bay, empty. A tray of syringes scattered across the floor, one broken and dried with dark residue. The locker room. Empty. Showers still damp, towels half hung. Everywhere the same story. People were here, then they weren't. Hours passed this way. We kept expecting answers, but all we found were questions. And then the radios started picking up the storm. Command to Black Tide team, be advised, tropical depression strengthening. Storm advancing faster than expected. Estimate landfall on your position in 16 hours. Repeat, 16 hours. Morales cursed under his breath. He looked at Alvarez and the other company men. You said you could shut this rig down fast. How fast? Alvarez swallowed. 6 hours, maybe more. It's not just pulling a plug, it's a full process. If we don't secure the drills, pressure valves, pumps, this whole thing could blow. Then we move faster, Morales snapped. We've got a deadline. The storm wasn't just weather anymore. It was a countdown. We pushed deeper into the rig. The higher levels gave way to narrow corridors and industrial platforms. The lights flickered constantly now, some dead entirely, forcing us to rely on flashlights.
The smell was worse here, a sour, earthen stench that clung in our throats. Slime trails streaked walls and floors, faint but unmistakable. Some pulsed faintly in our beams, like they were still wet. Corporal Hayes knelt near one. This isn't mud. Look at it. It's alive. No, Morales said firmly. Don't start that. But I saw it too. The way the street glistened, the way it seemed to shift when the light passed over it. We entered the crew lounge. The TV was still on, playing static. A half-dozen mugs of beer sat on the counter, flat and untouched. One still had fingerprints on the glass. And then, for the briefest moment, I swore I saw movement in the reflection of the TV. A figure standing in the doorway behind me. I spun, rifle up, but the corridor was empty. Nothing but the faint drip, drip, drip of water. Except it wasn't water. The drip was thicker, darker, each drop hitting the floor with a sound like wet clay. When I followed the trail upward, my beam caught the ceiling. Something had smeared across the steel above us, long streaks of that black, viscous sludge. And embedded in it, God help me, was a handprint. Not pressed onto the ceiling, but into it, as if someone had been dragged upward into the steel itself. Hayes swore loudly and stepped back. One of the company men retched in the corner. Morales barked, "Keep it together. We don't know what this is yet." But his voice wasn't steady anymore. We regrouped and pushed onward, step by step, corridor by corridor. And everywhere we looked, the rig answered us with silence. Until finally, hours into the sweep, we circled back to the sealed doors leading down into engineering. The place where we'd heard that dragging sound. Morales stood in front of it, staring at the rusted steel. The storm growled somewhere outside, closer now, rattling the rig. He looked back at us. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where we find our answers." And though he didn't say it, we all knew the truth. This was where we'd find the missing crew, or what was left of them. The door to engineering loomed in front of us, a slab of steel painted safety yellow, streaked with rust and something darker. Warning stencils were nearly worn away, but we didn't need them. Everything about that place radiated danger. Morales ordered us to hold. He signaled for Alvarez and the other company men to step forward. "You said this was the heart of the rig. You're up." Alvarez paled. "You want us to go first?" "Not alone," Morales said. "We'll cover you. But you know the layout. We don't." The three company men exchanged looks, then reluctantly moved toward the door. Alvarez keyed in a code on the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the locks disengaged with a grinding clunk. The door groaned open. Hot, damp air rolled out. The stench hit us harder now. Wet soil, oil, and something sour beneath it all, like rot that had been sealed away too long.
We descended. The stairwell was narrow, claustrophobic, each step ringing against metal grates. Water, or something thicker, dripped steadily, echoing in the space. When we emerged onto the engineering deck, the air felt heavy, humid. The lights here were dimmer, more flicker than glow. Shadows moved unnaturally along the walls, stretching and warping when the fluorescence buzzed overhead. The first chamber was lined with machinery. Massive pumps, gauges, pipes hissing faintly, all of it still running. That was the worst part. The rig was alive. It was still breathing, still drilling, even though the people were gone. We spread out cautiously, flashlights sweeping over the room. "Stay sharp," Morales whispered into comms. "Anything moves, call it." For a while, nothing. Just the rhythmic thrum of machinery. Then we found the first real sign of them. A work boot. Just one, wedged in the corner near a pump. It wasn't empty. Inside was a foot. We stood there in frozen silence, the company men gagging behind us. The flesh was pale, swollen, but intact, like the rest of the body had been pulled out of it. Hayes muttered, "What the hell could do that?"
No one answered. We pushed deeper, nerves raw. The catwalks creaked under our boots as we moved between tanks and piping. The deeper we went, the more we saw. Tools dropped mid-use, a flashlight still burning weakly, a wrench slick with that black sludge. In one corner, we found a locker room door wedged open. Inside, the walls were slick with the substance. It clung in ropes, dripping slowly to the floor. And in the center of the room, a chair. Strapped to it, a body, or what was left of one. The skin was bloated, stretched, glistening with slime. The face was gone, replaced by a blank, smooth surface of dark fluid, pulsed faintly, like it was still trying to form features. One of the company men screamed. Morales grabbed his vest and slammed him against the wall. "Shut up! You want to bring the whole rig down on us?" But his own voice shook. I couldn't stop staring at the thing. It wasn't just dead. It was being changed, absorbed. We left it behind. Every corridor after that seemed narrower, darker. Every shadow stretched too long. The storm announced itself more clearly now. Wind howling through vents, the rig shuddering under the first real waves. The comms buzzed again. "Command to Black Tide team, weather update. Storm ETA 12 hours. Advise immediate progress." 12 hours. That was all. We pressed on, urgency clawing at us. The engineering deck spread wide, a labyrinth of machinery, catwalks, and storage bays. Every new passage threatened to swallow us. Then it happened. We were crossing a grated walkway over a vast chamber of pipes when something dripped onto Hayes' shoulder. He brushed it with his glove, looked down. Thick, black fluid. Slowly, all our lights tilted upward. And there it was. Something clung to the ceiling above us. A mass of shifting sludge, rippling and sliding over the steel like liquid alive. For a moment it was formless. Then it shifted, pulling itself into something vaguely human-shaped. A face formed. Not a real one, a mask of stretched fluid, blank-eyed, mouth gaping. It looked at us. Hayes screamed and fired. Bullets tore through it, spraying droplets of thick sludge that rained down on us. But the thing didn't fall. It just melted back into the shadows above, vanishing deeper into the rig's guts. Silence followed. Only the dripping remained. Morales growled, "We move, now!" And we did. Faster, tighter together. But in that moment, we all knew the truth. We weren't alone on the Black Tide rig. And whatever had taken the crew was still here. The rig swallowed us deeper. Every deck felt the same. Narrow corridors, dripping pipes, the flicker of half-dead fluorescence. The smell was unbearable now. Earth and rot, thick enough to taste. We didn't talk much anymore.
Only Morales' orders, whispered and sharp. Every other sound seemed too loud, like it might bring something down on us. We reached a wide maintenance bay, its walls slick with condensation. Rows of lockers lined one side. A crane hung overhead, still holding a suspended load of drilling equipment. The place was quiet, empty. We spread out to search. I stuck close to Hayes. He looked pale, jittery. He hadn't been the same since that thing on the ceiling. The company men fumbled nervously with their instruments, checking gauges, muttering about containment protocols and pressure stabilizers. It was background noise, useless against the weight pressing in on us. Then I heard it again. That sound. Wet. Dragging. Somewhere in the shadows above the catwalks. I froze, motioned Hayes to listen. His eyes widened. He'd heard it too. But Morales barked, "Keep moving! Stay sharp! Don't freeze up!" So we did. Until it happened. Private Jensen, one of the youngest in our squad, moved ahead to check a side passage. He was maybe 10 feet away, flashlight beam bouncing across rusted steel. Then it was just gone. Not the light. Him. 1 second, he was there. The next, something dropped from the ceiling like a curtain of black liquid, and he was swallowed. No scream. No gunfire. Just gone. I saw it. Only me. A ripple, a shape, pulling him upward into the shadows. His light clattered to the floor, rolling to a stop against my boot. I froze, staring at that beam of light, too stunned to move. Hayes whispered, "Where'd he go?" I couldn't answer. My throat was locked. "Where the hell did Jensen go?" Morales demanded. All I could do was stammer. He was here, he's... But what could I say? That the ceiling had eaten him? That black mud had come alive and stolen him whole? Morales grabbed my vest, yanking me close. "Spit it out, soldier." I don't know, I whispered. He was just gone. The squad shifted uneasily, scanning the shadows, weapons raised. Hayes's light cut across the ceiling. Nothing there, just rust, drips, shadows. "God damn it," Morales growled. "No one goes alone, no one." But we all knew the truth. I wasn't lying. Something had taken him, and it was still up there. We moved tighter after that, shoulders almost touching. Every sound made us flinch. The storm outside grew louder, rattling the rig, howling through the vents. Lightning flashed through a narrow porthole, painting the chamber stark white for a second. That's when I saw it. The smear. On the far wall where steel met floor, a dark stain, thick and wet, glistening in the flashlight beams. It wasn't just a smear. It was a trail, leading deeper. We followed it, step by step, boots clanging softly against the grates. The air grew heavier, hotter, the smell overpowering. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, engineering. And we saw it. The nest. It spread across the machinery, a vast colony of sludge dripping and writhing like living tar. Shapes pulsed within it, bones, half-digested limbs, faces frozen in silent screams. The whole mass shifted slowly, breathing, feeding. One of the company men sobbed. The nest answered. It shivered, moved, and then split. Shapes tore themselves free from the mass, pulling upright, forming crude mockeries of human figures. Their limbs were too long, their movements too fluid, faces stretched and collapsed, never holding form. They turned toward us, and they moved. "Contact!" Morales roared. The chamber erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes strobing the nightmare into jagged glimpses. Sludge figures surging forward,
bullets passing through them, droplets spraying and reforming. The air filled with the smell of rot and gunpowder. The nest itself pulsed harder, as though the gunfire was feeding it. I fired until my magazine ran dry, and still they came. This wasn't a search anymore. This was survival. The nest erupted. Sludge shapes lunged out of the mass, pulling themselves upright, sliding across the steel floor with grotesque speed. Their limbs bent wrong, stretching like liquid rubber, snapping back with wet cracks. Faces formed and collapsed on their bodies in a constant, shifting nightmare. We opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit the chamber in violent bursts. Bullets shredded through them, spraying chunks of slime that splattered against the walls, only to reform, writhing back into shape. "Keep shooting!" Morales bellowed. But we all knew it wasn't working. The creatures surged forward. One of the company men screamed as a tendril wrapped around his throat, yanking him into the mass. He vanished in seconds, leaving nothing but a twisted helmet spinning across the floor. Chaos. Pure chaos. Grenades went off, concussive blasts rocking the chamber. For a heartbeat, the creatures staggered, their bodies collapsing into puddles. But then the sludge pulled itself back together, flowing into fresh shapes, stronger than before. "Fall back," Morales shouted. "Regroup at Checkpoint Echo." We splintered, panic breaking the formation. Some fled through side passages, others scrambled up catwalks. Gunfire echoed in every direction, mingled with screaming. I ran. I don't even remember which way. Just followed the first open corridor, Hayes at my side, the two surviving company men stumbling behind us. The radio crackled. "Alpha Team, fall back, GH." Static. "Bravo Team, report." Silence. Then Morales' voice, firm but strained. "Stay alive. Regroup at..." His words cut off mid-sentence, replaced by a wet gurgle.
The radio went dead. I froze in the corridor, panting. "Sergeant? Sergeant, respond!"
Nothing. The silence told me everything. Morales was gone. I looked at Hayes, wide-eyed, pale, clutching his rifle like it was the only thing anchoring him. "We can't go back," I said. "We'll never regroup. They're gone." He shook his head. We can't leave them. They're gone," I repeated, my voice cracked. "It's us or nothing." The company men whimpered behind us. I made the call. "We go up. We go to the bird. Now!" We climbed. Corridors rattled under the storm. Rain hammered the rig from outside, echoing through the steel bones. Every shadow seemed to move. Behind us, the sound followed. Wet dragging, liquid slapping against metal. They were coming. We reached a junction. A figure lurched out of the darkness, sludge coalescing into a human shape. Its face rippled, shifting into something I recognized. Jensen, the soldier who'd vanished. His mouth opened in a scream that wasn't his. I pulled a grenade from my vest and hurled it down the passage. The blast lit the corridor in a fireball, steel shuddering around us. For a second, the figure dissolved into bubbling chunks. The others staggered, their forms collapsing. It bought us maybe 5 seconds. Then they reformed, dragging themselves back into shape. "Run!" I screamed. We sprinted. Up stairwells, through dripping corridors. The storm was howling now, tearing at the rig. One of the company men screamed behind me. I spun just in time to see him dragged into the dark by a tidal surge of sludge, his flashlight vanishing like a drowning star. "Keep moving!" I shouted at the last one. "Don't stop!" But it didn't matter. On the final stairwell before the landing pad, the last company man slipped. He hit the grates hard, scrambled to his feet, and froze. Tendrils slithered up between the steps, wrapping around his legs. He shrieked, clawing at me for help. I tried. I swear I tried. But the tendrils yanked him through the grates, his screams muffled, then gone. It was just Hayes and me now. We hit the final stairwell. The landing pad loomed above, our salvation. The helicopter's rotors were already spinning, crew waving us on, but the doors behind us burst open. The sludge poured through, a wave of writhing black climbing over itself, tendrils slamming against the walls. Dozens of faces screamed silently from within it, mouths stretching open and closed like drowning men. Hayes froze. Jesus Christ! I yanked a grenade from my vest, pulled the pin, and hurled it. The blast lit the corridor in fire and smoke. For a second, the creatures collapsed, splattered across the walls. Then, impossibly, they pulled themselves back together. "Run!" I shouted. We scrambled onto the pad. The storm was raging now, rain slashing sideways, wind tearing at our gear. The helicopter dipped and wavered in the gusts. The sludge spilled after us, flooding across the pad, writhing and clawing upward. Hayes turned, firing into the mass. "Go, get to the bird!" I struck a flare. Red fire hissed to life in my hand. The creatures recoiled instantly. They screamed, not with mouths, but with a chorus of bubbling voices that rattled in my bones. They pulled back, writhing like worms in salt. "Fire!" I gasped. "They hate fire!" "Then light the whole goddamn ocean!" Hayes shouted, dragging me toward the helicopter. We stumbled inside as the crew grabbed us, shoving us into seats. The pilot screamed over the storm, "We're too heavy! We have to go now!" But before the doors closed, the sludge surged forward one last time, slamming against the landing pad and wrapping around the skids. Tendrils lashed upward, striking the open door. One caught Hayes. He screamed as it dragged him halfway out, his rifle clattering to the floor. I grabbed his vest with both hands, pulling with everything I had. "Don't let go!" he howled. The flare was still in my fist. I jammed it against the tendril. The creature shrieked, recoiling in a spray of boiling sludge. Hayes tumbled back into the chopper, gasping, soaked in black residue, but alive. "Go!" I roared. The helicopter lifted, rotors screaming, pulling us free. The sludge surged beneath us, climbing stairwells, ladders, scaffolds, boiling upward in a living tide. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the nightmare as it filled the pad below us. And then the storm hit full force. The rig groaned as waves hammered its supports. Towers toppled. Fire blossomed from ruptured fuel lines, lightning igniting it in bursts of orange flame. The black-tide rig shuddered and collapsed, dragged into the ocean's teeth. From above, we saw it drown, but not die. The sludge swirled, circling like a whirlpool, refusing to sink. Hayes clutched my arm, his face white. "It's not gone. Tell me you don't see it. It's not gone." I couldn't lie. I saw it. The storm would bury the rig, but the ocean couldn't hold what we had awoken. The debriefing was clinical, cold. I sat in a room of faceless officers telling them what happened, what we saw, what we lost. They wrote it down, nodding, pretending to listen. Then one of them closed the file and said, "Storm destroyed the rig. Official report, equipment failure, unfortunate casualties. Do you understand, Sergeant?" I did. The truth wasn't leaving that room. But the truth didn't care. A week later, on a small beach hundreds of miles away, children played in the sand while their parents lounged under umbrellas. The sky was clear, the waves gentle. One little girl ran to the shoreline, laughing, splashing in the surf. Something black washed up against her feet. Thick, tar-like. It writhed just slightly before the wave pulled it back out to sea. The girl frowned, then turned back to her parents. "Daddy?" she called, pointing. "What's that?" But the ocean was already swallowing the sludge again, pulling it deeper, spreading it wider. Waiting. The black-tide rig is gone now, swallowed by the ocean, torn apart by the storm. But you and I both know that doesn't mean the nightmare is over. Somewhere out there in the dark, it's waiting. And maybe one day,
it will come back. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Every bit of support means the world, especially for a growing channel like this one, and it helps us keep bringing you more terrifying tales from the deep, the dark, and the unknown. Until next time, keep your lights burning bright, and whatever you do, don't look too long at the tide. Some threats don't make the news, not because they aren't dangerous, but because the people who deal with them don't leave paper trails. His name's not in any database. No social security number, no family, no rank, no medals, just a file marked for emergency use only. And last week he was sent to Drift, Kentucky. Drift, Kentucky. Population barely 70. The kind of town the government forgets, unless something wants to be found. For 2 weeks now, a cattle farmer has been reporting something stalking his land, something that moves without sound, something that watches. The local sheriff has visited the property multiple times, doesn't know what to make of it except dead, mutilated cattle. He has chalked it up to wolves, but the farmer insists it's not. No tracks, no howls at night. And for multiple full-size cows to be taken down over several nights, it would be an immense pack. There would be tracks, bedding down locations, and of course howls at night. There's been none of that. All that has been put into the sheriff's report and filed, which has made it up the chain to people that officially do not exist. A black SUV drives down a cracked country road swallowed by thick Kentucky woodland. The sun is low, casting long shadows across cornfields and fog-covered hills. An old farmhouse sits at the edge of the woods, rusted tools on the porch, a barbed wire fence broken in places. The barn looms behind it, paint peeling. Silas Reed steps out of the SUV, early 40s, gaunt face, military posture, black duffel slung over one shoulder. His eyes scan the tree line first, not the house, slowly and methodically, like he is burning every tree and bush into memory. Silas Reed doesn't ask questions. He doesn't take notes. He watches. He listens. He prepares. Farmer John Redding steps out onto the porch. Late 60s, hard-weathered. A shotgun leans against the railing. "You with the sheriff?" Silas replies dryly. "No." "You EPA? USDA? Got no badge." "I was sent to deal with it. Show me the fields." A foggy pasture with distant tree lines. A dead cow lies in the grass, body bloated, entrails neatly removed. No blood, just emptiness. Silas kneels by the carcass, pulls out a black UV flashlight. Under the beam, faint bioluminescent smears glow in a claw pattern. Not human, not animal. No signs of struggle, no tire tracks, no footprints, but the organs were taken clean, and something was dragged back into the woods. Silas notices every bird has gone silent, even the bugs. John, quietly, it waits in the trees, just stands there some nights. Don't move, don't blink. When I look too long, I get this buzzing in my teeth, like it don't want me seeing it. Silas doesn't respond. He just stares into the trees. Silas then looks at the barn. How full is that? Able to work out of? John nods and they start to walk towards the barn. Silas opens the swinging barn doors. Dust motes float through slatted sunlight. The scent of old hay and engine grease hangs thick in the air. Silas kneels before an open military-grade field case, foam-lined and meticulously organized. Item by item, he begins laying out the tools of his trade. A custom-built battle rifle, matte black, suppressed, equipped with a thermoscope and underbarrel attachment. The serial number has been scratched off. A sidearm, an old-school M1911, worn but oiled clean, etched with faint symbols just behind the grip. A helmet, carbon fiber plated with a mounted 4-lens night vision goggle array, not military issue, modified. A compact drone with infrared capabilities sits beside a tablet loaded with encrypted field software. He moves slower as he lifts something else out of the case. A small, ornate silver flask, old and heavy, engraved with interlocking crosses and strange text, not Latin, something older. He unscrews the cap. Inside, holy water with a sharp metallic scent. He lines up 4 smaller vials of the water and places them in slots on a tactical belt. Next to them, a roll of iron nails, sharpened, red wax-sealed wax paper pouches of blessed salt, a folded cloth sigil wrapped around a black candle stub, a jagged piece of obsidian glass wrapped in cord, worn like a pendant under his shirt. He unfolds his field journal. It's handwritten, pages filled with sketches and entries like C7 manifestations, Appalachia sightings, 3rd confirmed silent type, symptoms, livestock mutilation, tree sigils, no EMF distortion, avoid gaze, eyes act as trigger. He draws a quick symbol in chalk on the barn floor, a protective glyph from the journal, and places a flare and motion alarm at each corner.
Outside, the wind picks up. Leaves rustle unnaturally. John, who is still standing the threshold of the barn watching Silas unpack. "You some kind of priest?" Silas doesn't look up. "No." "Then what the hell are you?" Silas finishes drawing a circle around the chalk sigil and mutters something under his breath, then finally meets John's eyes. "A closer." He doesn't pray. He doesn't hope. He just makes sure the door stays shut, even if it costs him everything. "It's getting close to dusk. I need you to stay inside your house. Make sure you are armed at all times, but whatever you hear, you are not to leave your house while it is dark out. Do you understand?" John gulps, then nods his head. Midnight. Moonlight filters through the tree canopy. Crickets go silent. Inside the barn, Silas sits in the dark. No flashlight. Just a loaded sidearm and an open notebook in his lap. Suddenly a chime. Motion detector tripped. Silas tenses. Outside? Clicking. Wet and organic, like bone on glass. It stood just beyond the tree line. Watching. Not hiding. It wanted him to know. It was there. A cow bellows in the field. A snap, then silence. Silas bolts out of the barn with the flare gun, fires. A red burst lights up the trees, and for a split second, something huge darts between the trunks. Unnatural, long-limbed, skin like wet bark. John, who has been sitting on his porch with his shotgun across his lap. "What in God's name was that?" Silas doesn't answer. He walks slowly into the dark toward the trees, but it's gone. He scans slowly with both his thermal and night vision, and just forest. It just wanted to toy with him tonight, it seems. Whatever's in the forest near Drift isn't hunting for food. It's hunting for something else. And Silas Reed isn't sure this time if he's the predator or the prey. All he can do is prepare for the next night and the next opportunity. The next evening, the barn is dark. No lights, no sound except for the occasional creak of wood and distant animal cries. Silas sits alone, fully geared, rifle across his lap, night vision ready, every muscle still. Some monsters don't announce themselves with howls or screams. They come with silence, with waiting, with knowing you're being watched. Outside, the motion sensor clicks on, a soft beep. Silas glances at the display, Zone 3, northern fence. He doesn't move yet. A low clicking starts, not mechanical, not human, like bone tapping against wood. Then static bursts in his earpiece, a sharp, high-pitched tone like pressure in your skull. He puts on the night vision goggles and moves outside, stepping into the cool black pasture.
dense forest. Green-filtered night vision imagery, steam rising faintly from disturbed earth. Silas moves slowly, boots silent on the damp grass. And he sees it, a tall, humanoid shape just beyond the trees. Still. Wrong. Too tall, too narrow. No visible face, limbs just a little too long. When it moves, it doesn't walk, it shifts like frames skipping in a film reel. He lifts his rifle. The thermal scope flares, but the thing gives off no heat, no blood, no breath. It wasn't alive, at least not in a way that belonged here. It turns its head slightly toward him, and his goggles short out, flooding with static. A burning noise rises in his ears. Silas rips them off and drops to one knee. Suddenly, gunfire explodes from behind him. It's the farmer. "Behind you!" Silas spins around. A second creature had moved silently up on him. Same build, slightly smaller. It leaps back into the forest, impossibly fast. He spins back around and nothing. The original entity is gone. Silas looks at the farmer. They don't speak. Just a slight nod and they walk back to the farmhouse. They walk into the house and Silas heads towards the kitchen. Old wallpaper, flickering light bulb. Silas is rinsing a burn on his neck. No cut, just a strange reddened spiral like frostbite. John, with shaking hands, is pouring whiskey into a glass. "There's more than one. I know it now." Silas quietly flips open his journal and begins sketching the creature. The outline is crude but somehow disturbing. Silas mutters to himself. Too fast. Doesn't show on thermal. Distorts electronics. Draws static. He pulls out the silver flask and downs a mouthful of holy water. Not because he's religious, but for ritual protection. A habit. A field test. He'd faced things that whispered in Latin. Things that only bled in moonlight. But this wasn't just a creature. It was part of the place now. A spiritual infection with form. He holds the obsidian pendant to the wound on his neck. The spiral mark sizzles faintly, then fades. Early morning light filters through a pale mist. The forest seems too still. No bird calls, no rustle of movement. Just the faint whisper of wind brushing through dying leaves. Silas walks slowly, rifle slung across his chest, helmet on, night vision flipped up. His breath fogs slightly, even though it's warm. The air feels off, like walking into a room just after something died. He follows the trail, not made by footsteps, but a subtle pattern of disruptions in nature. Trees with bark peeled off in vertical strips, moss curling away from the trunks, small mounds of dirt where there shouldn't be any. Each disruption is spaced evenly, almost mathematically, ritualistic. This wasn't a trail left by prey or predator. It was intentional. A marking, a guide, a ritual pathway laid out in a geometry not meant for human minds. He stops at a cluster of saplings. Every branch on the eastern-facing side is bent exactly 90 degrees, pointing inward, like a corridor made of wood and silence. He steps through. A large, circular clearing in the forest, unnatural in its symmetry. No grass grows here, just packed dirt, bone fragments, and a sickly green haze hanging in the light. At the center stands a stone structure, waist-high, eroded by time, but clearly unnatural. The stone is a dark, smooth basalt, unlike anything found in this part of Kentucky. Carved into the surface, symbols, spirals that knot back into themselves, jagged lines forming a star that doesn't point anywhere. Long vertical gashes like tally marks, but too many to count without getting a headache. Silas runs a gloved hand over the markings. They feel warm. His breath catches. The clearing is colder than before. He glances down at his boots. The earth around the stone is dry and cracked, but he hears water. Looking closer, he realizes the cracks form a spiral pattern, just like the mark that burned into his neck. He steps back instinctively. Scattered around the stone structure are bones, carefully placed. Dozens, maybe hundreds. He kneels down to inspect them.
Some are clearly animal. Deer femurs, cattle jawbones, raccoon skulls. But some are wrong. Too long. Joints in the wrong places. Skull plates fused shut like a child's, but too large. They're all arranged in perfect concentric circles, outward from the stone like ripples in a pond. This wasn't a kill site. It was an altar, the sacred space for something that understood death not as an end, but a key. He hears something behind him, a breath, a scrape, but when he turns, there's nothing there, just trees. He pulls a small paper packet of blessed salt from his pouch, tears it open, and sprinkles it into the spiral. At first, nothing. Then the earth trembles, just slightly. A vibration, more than a shake, felt in the bones and teeth. The temperature drops 10 degrees instantly. A sound emerges, not from the forest, but from inside the stone. A hollow thumping like a slow heartbeat. And above him, the sky seems off. The clouds twist without moving, the sun dims just slightly for no reason at all. Silas steps back a few spaces and takes a knee. He then starts to unsling his backpack and opens it up and withdraws a small black case. Inside, a drone is nestled. Silas activates the drone. It lifts silently over the clearing, scanning in infrared and ultraviolet. He watches the feed on his forearm screen. Infrared, nothing. Ultraviolet, a flash. Something tall and branching, moving through the trees just outside the clearing's edge, too fast to follow. Then more. Dozens. Not walking, not even running, just shifting, moving in and out of frame like light through water. They aren't attacking. They're watching, guarding. Silas backs away, leaving a flare behind on the stone. He doesn't ignite it, just places it. A marker, a warning. This wasn't the first nest, but it might be the oldest, and something was using it again. As he exits the clearing, he notices one last thing. On the back of a tree, hidden from the clearing center, a carving. The spiral again, but this time with a second mark overlapping it. A crown. Whatever ruled this place had not yet arrived, but its servants were already here, preparing the land. And if Silas didn't stop it in time, this little farm town in Kentucky would become a door. He heads back towards the farm. Once in the field, he can see John on his porch, bent over as if inspecting something. The farmer found something on his porch, a dead calf, left neatly upright, legs folded underneath, eyes missing. On the wall above it, scratched deep into the wood, "She's coming." Silas stares at the message. There's a queen. A what? Everything out here. It's clearing a path. This is preparation. It's a prelude. This wasn't a random breach. Something deeper was waking up beneath the soil, and these things were just the harbingers. There are levels to infestation. Some things crawl through cracks. Others open doors. The trees were watching now, listening, and whatever lived behind them was almost ready to come through. Silas sits alone inside the barn. It's mid-afternoon. The drone screen is powered off. The rifle is being cleaned slowly, methodically. Everything is quiet except the slow hum of insects returning to life. He reaches into a side pouch and removes a black government-issued satellite phone, unbranded except for a fingerprint reader. He presses his thumb to the pad. The device beeps. Reed, reporting from Drift. Local livestock mutilations confirmed. 2 separate entities engaged. Bipedal. Camouflage properties. No thermal signature. Limited intelligence. Ritual markers confirmed. Pause. Found a potential nest site in Sector C.
Clear spiral markings, fossilized structure, altered behavior. Something's coming through. Might be a Class 4 event. Another pause. Recommend escalation if I don't report in next cycle. Might need a clean team, biohazard, containment specialists, psych ops. This is not local. This is old. We'll attempt engagement tonight. We'll confirm viability of closure by morning.
He ends the call, places the phone in a lead-lined pouch. Then he picks up the flask of holy water, removes the lid, and dips a finger in, marking a cross on his chest, silently. No backup, no cavalry, no rescue. If it came through and he failed to stop it, there'd be nothing left to contain. The perimeter of the woods, Silas is setting charges, fire line markers, small thermite-based flare pods rigged to create a controlled forest burn if triggered. He plants one every 20 feet, just beyond the ritual clearing, forming a ring around the nest. Each pod is marked with a chalk sigil, an old protective rune adapted for modern use. Circle of flame, salt to bind, smoke to blind, he mutters to himself. He pulls the obsidian pendant from under his shirt, tightens it in his grip. He wasn't just preparing to kill it. He was preparing to seal it in. As day gives way to night, Silas once again settles into the barn, in a resting, ready position. Midnight, dense fog. The woods pulse with unnatural sound, clicks, groans, and whispers echoing through the dark like 1,000 voices just out of sync. Silas moves outside of the barn, standing in the clearing, rifle raised. Motion sensors ping softly in his ear. Then, they arrive. Not one, not two, a dozen of them. Tall, thin-limbed things emerging from the tree line like moving saplings, skin the texture of wet bark, faces a blank knot of scarred tissue and flickering light. Their movement is silent, except when they click, and when they do, the trees respond, shaking gently without wind. He doesn't hesitate. Silas opens fire. Crack! 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 Rifle rounds snap through the clearing. One creature drops instantly, burning from the inside as silver-coated rounds pierce its chest. Another charges, faster than it should be able to move. Silas ducks, fires again. 3 more rounds punch through its abdomen, but it keeps coming. He rolls to the side and slams the butt of the rifle into its leg, knocking it off balance. As it falls, he plunges a silver nail straight into its spine. Hiss! It screams in static and evaporates. He empties the last few rounds in the rifle at close range, dropping 2 more, but then, click, out. More coming now, too many. He ejects the mag, tosses the rifle aside, and draws the M1911 from his hip holster. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the last thing he trusted. Flash, bang, flash. The pistol roars as he backs into a defensive circle, dropping more of the beasts. They scream as holy water rounds tear through them, sizzling on contact. One gets close, too close. It grabs his arm. Claws sink into flesh, but Silas drives a salt vial into its mouth and punches it shut. The vial bursts. The creature howls and implodes, leaving only smoke. Some died like animals. Others like ideas unraveling. They surround him. 6, 7, 8 remain. They circle, clicking in unison now, forming a perimeter like sentient wolves. Then everything goes still. The fire dims. The air becomes heavy like it's folding in on itself. And from the stone at the center of the clearing, the queen begins to rise. The ground splits. Roots uncoil. Stone bleeds black ichor. And from the center, the ring of assailants round him are disappearing, like falling apart into sand, and the sand is flowing towards the middle, coalescing. A massive figure begins to rise, as if pulled up by invisible strings. 10 feet tall, hunched, swathed in tangled flesh and bone. Parts of its body like a mass of limbs not yet finished forming. Its face is an inverted spiral, 3 black orbs that rotate inward like eyes orbiting a center that never stays still. And it stares directly at him. He freezes.
He can't help it. The world tilts as if gravity itself is being pulled into her gaze. Whispers flood his head. A woman's voice, endless, layered, and somewhere in it, his own mother's voice, twisted and repeated. You were always meant to open the door. He drops to his knees, nose bleeding, vision tunneling. In one final motion, Silas rips the pendant off, slams it against the ground, and ignites the thermite fire line. A ring of white-hot fire explodes around the clearing. The trees catch. The air shrieks. The creatures scream in unnatural tones like audio run backward through a broken speaker. The queen flails in the fire, her form flickering between flesh, shadow, and geometry that shouldn't exist. Silas stumbles backward through the flames, holy water burning into his vest as the heat rises. He collapses at the edge of the field, eyes blurred, chest heaving. The last thing he sees before passing out? The queen, screaming, not in pain, but in warning, and then she vanishes in a burst of ash and flickering light. It wasn't a victory. It was a delay, a closed gate, not a locked one. Dawn breaks. Smoke rises from the tree line. Charred bodies litter the ground, some still twitching. Silas sits at the base of a tree, gear scorched, fingers burnt, eyes open. He pulls out the phone, dialing. Bleeding from the temple. Target neutralized. Site unstable. Cleanup required. Burn it all. No survivors. And don't send another team. If she left a mark, it's already too late. Early dawn. The woods are silent, smoldering. Mist clings to the blackened trees. Ash floats in the air like dead snow. Silas limps through the clearing. His helmet hangs loose, night vision cracked. One arm is bandaged. His sidearm still dangles in his hand, grip blood-slick. He glances down at what remains of the altar, now a melted, glassy pit. Nothing in it. No queen, just scorched earth. Behind him, the helicopters descend, 3 unmarked black helos, quiet rotors. Armed response teams in biohazard gear jump out with brutal efficiency. They begin combing the area. Geiger counters click softly. Shane missed the tree line. Body bags, dozens, are zipped. Some human, most not. A civilian containment officer, white-suited and faceless under a mirrored helmet, walks up to Silas. Command says your report was incomplete. I was bleeding out. We counted 31 bodies, 7 partial entities, 13 exposed civilians. 5 are dead. What about the structure? Whatever that altar was, there's nothing left but slag. The tree line's been marked anomalous. Your obsidian pendant cracked. Silas holds up the 2 halves of the obsidian shard on a broken cord. He pockets them. You think this site is sealed? Silas stares at the woods, listens. Nothing. Sealed for now. You can kill what crawls, but what waits, you only bury deeper. Daylight. The farmhouse is barely standing. Its porch is half gone, scorched. Glass crunches under Silas's boots as he enters. John Redding sits at the table, leg in a brace, arm in a sling. A cigarette trembles between his fingers. His face looks older now, decades older. I saw her, the tall one. Looked like my wife. That's what it does. You see what hurts the most. Is it over? Silas doesn't answer, just stares out the window at the tree line. Burned, but still standing. They said someone would come by. Government rep. Don't talk to them. I won't, John says quietly. Silas pulls a small slip of paper from his coat, sets it on the table. Bank account number, Cayman Islands. Already paid out. Buy land somewhere else, west of the Mississippi. Don't look back. John stares at the numbers, then at Silas. You ain't what I expected. No one ever is. Night. Silas sits alone in a rented motel room, pale green walls, a single buzzing lamp. He takes out his encrypted government-issued phone. Dials.
Read. Status. Site neutralized. Unknown entity partially manifested. Structure destroyed. 24 civilian casualties. Farms a loss. Recommend full sweep? Maybe. Depends on the follow-up. If any survivors exhibit dreamwalking or audio bleed, you'll need to carpet bomb the ridge. Understood. Back up. Silas wipes a smear of blood from his neck. No, not yet. I'll monitor one more night. We'll expect a confirmation transmission at 0900 tomorrow. If not... Silas ends the call without waiting. He sets the phone down, looks in the mirror. For a second, his reflection doesn't move. Another town, weeks later. A small girl skips rope in an alley behind a church. She hums a tune under her breath, soft, in a language not quite human. Behind her, on the brick wall, a spiral carved in chalk. The mother walks past, startled. "Where'd you learn that?" The girl beams at her mother. "From the whispering lady in the trees." There are men like Silas Reed, trained, armed, and broken in just the right way to kill things most people pretend don't exist. But some things aren't meant to die. They sleep, they dream, and they wait. If you made it this far, you're one of the rare few who know how deep the dark really goes. This channel is just getting started, so if this story hit you, if it stuck with you, even a little, hit that like button, subscribe to stay with us. We're only going deeper from here. Your support means the world, and it helps bring more of these nightmares into the light. More stories are coming. We'll be waiting. The storm had lifted just long enough for the plane to punch through the clouds and nose down toward the airstrip. The Rangers sat strapped into the fuselage, their gear rattling with every buffet of wind. No one spoke. The only sound was the drone of the engines and the intermittent crackle of the onboard comms. Captain Harlow scanned his squad, 8 in total, hardened men and women, trained to walk into places where no one else would. But even here he could see it, the tension around the eyes, the tightening of jaw lines. No one liked being dispatched to a base that technically didn't exist. The pilot's voice bled through their headsets. "Fort Kestrel in sight. Copy that. No welcoming party on the ground." The Ranger team exchanged looks. A facility this size should have had at least a skeleton crew visible. Instead, the tarmac was white with drifted snow. A lonely radar tower rising crookedly above the barracks. The hangars stood with their doors half open, snow curling inside like slow tongues. The plane touched down hard, skidding slightly before grinding to a stop. Engines died. The silence was immediate and heavy. "Lock and load," Harlow ordered. The Rangers spilled out into the biting cold, their boots crunched on the snow, breaths fogging as they spread out, weapons raised. Above them, the radar dish groaned as it turned, though no power should have been left. Its slow skeletal movement was the only sign of life. Corporal Vega, always the joker until the jokes ran thin, muttered over comms. "Looks like everyone just got up and walked away." They moved toward the nearest building, the barracks. The door was ajar, snow crusted around the frame. Inside was warmer, but not by much. The lights were dim, flickering on backup power. The mess hall smelled of spoiled food and ammonia. Bowls of half-eaten stew sat in rows, long since frozen into lumps. A chair lay overturned near the far wall. Staff rooms were worse. Personal effects, clothes, wallets, letters, left behind in heaps. A coffee mug shattered in a hallway as if dropped mid-step. But no bodies. Not one. Sergeant O'Neill clicked his tongue. Panic evacuation. No way this was orderly. They swept the hangars next. One still held a helicopter, rotors sagging under the weight of ice, side door yawning open. The toolkits around it were spilled as though the mechanics had walked away mid-repair. The second hangar was empty, tire tracks leading out toward the frozen runway, but stopping abruptly in the snow. Whatever vehicle it was never made it far. Then the housing building, the place where officers and scientists bunked. Papers littered the floors, reports stamped with black ink seals of clearance far above the Rangers' pay grade. Desks overturned, lockers hanging open. Blood smears here, faint but real. A handprint dragged down the wall near the stairwell as though someone had been pulled downward against their will. Private Torres stopped short near a locked steel door in the basement level. Above it, in flaking red stenciling, secure access, authorized personnel only. The lock mechanism was intact, but someone had left it on standby, humming faintly with backup power.
Harlow studied it, jaw tightening. This is it, the entrance to the real facility. The team fell into formation. O'Neill wired into the panel, sparks jumping as he worked. The lock clanked, gears whirring, and the heavy door groaned open on pistons. Beyond yawned a steel elevator shaft, lit in dull emergency red, descending deep into the earth. A faint hum rose up from below, something mechanical and wrong, like a heartbeat rendered in iron. The Rangers exchanged a look. No radio, no survivors, and no road out but up, Vega said, shaking his head. Feels like a bad bet, Captain. Harlow stepped inside the elevator, rifle held low but ready. His voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed the weight pressing down on him. Orders are orders. We find out what happened here. One by one the Rangers followed, boots clanging on the grated floor of the lift. O'Neill hit the panel, and with a groan the doors sealed them in. The elevator lurched, then began to descend. The red light painted their faces, hollow and grim. Above, the world of snow and silence vanished. Ahead, only the deep, humming dark awaited.
The elevator groaned down the shaft, gears grinding like they hadn't been serviced in years. Emergency lights pulsed every few seconds, casting the team in alternating washes of red and shadow. No one spoke. The only sound was the clink of gear shifting and the hollow thrum rising from deep below. When the doors finally slid open, the air was warmer, tinged with iron and something chemical, bleach maybe, or ammonia. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with reinforced doors stamped security, command, and surveillance. Captain Harlow signaled the team to spread. Boots echoed on the concrete as they cleared the first rooms. The security hub was chaos. Lockers stood half open, gear spilling onto the floor. Monitors buzzed with static, though one still played a frozen image of the airfield above, grainy, caught mid-frame, like a photograph trapped in time. O'Neill leaned over the console, fingers brushing wires. Power's erratic, backup generators running, but something's draining the system, he muttered. In the corner, Vega swept his rifle over the walls, stopping at a patch of deep gouges. 4 long parallel lines dragged down the steel paneling, bending the metal inward. He whistled low. Tell me a man did that, and I'll eat my rifle. The administration wing was no better. Offices looked abandoned mid-crisis, papers strewn, chairs tipped over, reports marked with black ink and heavy stamps of classified. One desk still held a phone receiver dangling off its cord, a faint hiss of static seeping from it. Private Torres picked it up. Base command? This is Ranger Recon. A voice whispered back, faint but distinct. Help us. Torres jerked, nearly dropping the receiver. The line cut instantly to silence. He stared at the others, face pale. Could have been playback, O'Neill offered, though his voice carried no confidence. They regrouped in the briefing room, Long tables scattered with maps of the Arctic shelf, red circles marked over deep fissures in the ice. In one corner, a projector screen flickered on its own, replaying a loop of footage. Facility staff hustling through corridors, alarms blaring. A man in a lab coat shouted orders, pointing toward the elevator shaft. Then the feed glitched, froze, and cut to black. The Rangers froze when a sound echoed down the hall behind them. A rhythmic, metallic thumping. Weapons raised, they advanced. The sound grew louder, reverberating through the steel corridors until they reached a locked door stamped Armory. The thumping came from the other side. Hard, aggressive. "Something's inside," Vega whispered. Harlow nodded to O'Neill. He crouched, wired the panel, sparks flashing across his gloves. With a clank, the door creaked open. The team braced for movement. The room was empty. Only racks of rifles left in disarray, boxes of ammo spilled across the floor. But the far wall was covered in deep scratches, same as the security hub, metal curled outward this time, as though something had been clawing its way out. The thumping stopped the moment they entered. Then, faintly, from somewhere deeper below, came a low hum. Not machinery this time, not mechanical. Something layered, resonant, almost like a voice carried through the walls. Private Torres shifted uneasily. "You hear that?" Like it's calling, Captain Harlow's face was stone. "Stay sharp. We move to the next floor." The team regrouped at the stairwell leading further down. The hum grew stronger there, vibrating faintly in their bones. Red light bled from below like a warning flare. With weapons ready, they descended into the deeper dark. The stairwell felt longer than it should have been, each step echoing with a hollow clang that carried far below. By the time they reached the next landing, the air had changed, damp, metallic, and cloyingly sweet, like spoiled meat washed with disinfectant. The door to floor 2 creaked open with a groan. A rush of warm, stale air hit them, carrying a stench that made Torres gag into his sleeve. The medical bay stretched before them, rows of gurneys and curtained-off beds. Most were empty, but restraints dangled from their sides, some bent outward as if torn open with incredible force. On one bed, the mattress was shredded, stuffing pulled out in long, claw-like tears. Sergeant O'Neill swept his flashlight beam across the wall. Words had been scrawled in jagged strokes of blood or paint, impossible to tell which. "Don't listen to the ice." Vega chuckled dryly, but his voice cracked. Real reassuring. They moved on to the infirmary offices. Cabinets were toppled, medical charts scattered. Autopsy photos covered a desk, grainy shots of humanoid remains with translucent skin stretched tight over elongated bones. One image showed a face, but the skull was too broad, the eyes too far apart. Another had its ribcage peeled back, organs shriveled like dried fruit. "Not human," Torres muttered. His voice shook despite himself. Not even close. In the lab section, they found glass cryo tanks. Most were intact, frost clinging to the inside. Something shifted in one of them, just a trick of condensation, Harlow told himself, though his finger tightened on the trigger. Then they reached the shattered one. Its glass lay in shards across the floor, slick with a thin black fluid that pulsed faintly as though alive. The puddle stretched toward the drain in jagged rivulets, resisting the downward pull like veins crawling across the tile. "Stay clear of it," Harlow ordered, his voice iron. They advanced deeper. It was there they heard it first. Footsteps. The Rangers froze, weapons raised. Down the hall past the shattered cryotank, something moved. The shape flickered into view at the far corner, a man in a tattered lab coat staggering. He collapsed against the wall, coughing wetly. They rushed forward, Vega knelt, flashlight sweeping the man's pale face. His eyes were glassy, his lips bluish. Blood dripped from his nose. "Jesus, he's alive," Vega breathed. "We got a survivor." The man's eyes rolled back, then snapped open with sudden clarity. His voice came in gasps, frantic. "You shouldn't have come. They woke it up. The ice, the voices." He convulsed, clawing at Vega's vest. "Don't go down! Don't!" The lights overhead flickered. For one heartbeat of darkness, the man's eyes seemed black and bottomless. When the lights snapped back, he was gone. No body, no blood, only Vega on the floor staring at his empty hands. "What the fuck?" Torres whispered. No one answered. O'Neill swallowed hard. "Captain, that wasn't natural. Nothing just vanishes like." Then Torres hissed. "Movement!" Up high, they raised rifles. The thermal scope picked it up first, a glowing outline slithering across the ceiling vent. Too thin, too long. Arms, or what looked like arms, stretched farther than they should, joints bending wrong. The thing paused, head, or whatever passed for one, tilting down at them. Then it slid into the dark, the sound of skittering metal echoing through the ductwork. The Rangers stood frozen, barrels following empty space. Captain Harlow broke the silence. "We keep moving." Eyes sharp. That wasn't the last one. They pushed deeper into the labs, the emergency lights flickering more violently now, shadows bending and stretching like they were alive. The hum from the lower levels pulsed through the floor, stronger than ever, worming its way into their bones. And behind it, faint but growing clearer, came whispers. Dozens of them. In a language no one recognized, yet somehow each ranger felt they almost understood. The stairwell down was warmer still, but wrong, like standing too close to a furnace vent that shouldn't exist this deep under permafrost. Moisture dripped down the walls, hissing faintly as it hit the steel steps. The Rangers descended in silence, rifles sweeping, every breath tight with anticipation. The door to floor 3 opened with a groan. The smell hit first. Not rot, not chemical, burnt air, the tang of scorched metal and ozone. The floor stretched wide, a cavernous engineering sector, lined with pipes and catwalks, the thrum of machines beating like a second pulse beneath the Rangers' boots. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across massive turbines and generators that glowed faintly with overstrain. "This place is alive," Torres whispered. "Listen to it." O'Neill checked a console, frowning. "Backup generators aren't just running, they're being bled dry. Power's being diverted down below. Something's drawing it, feeding on it." They crossed the walkways, boots clanging. Harlow noticed frost forming and unnatural patterns across the walls, vein-like lines of ice branching outward from a deep fissure torn into the floor. Steam rose where the ice touched the hot pipes, but the patterns persisted like something crawling up from the ground itself. In the control hub, monitors still flickered. Logs scrolled across one. Project signal resonance phase 3. Contact initiated. Erratic frequency detected. Staff unstable. Recommend containment. Subjects responding to whispers. "Contact," Vega muttered, reading over Harlow's shoulder. "With what?" The answer came from the far end of the chamber. The lights died with a snap. The cavern plunged into red emergency glow. A screech of metal echoed through the space, followed by the crash of something heavy dropping onto the catwalk. The Rangers spun, rifles raised. Thermal scopes caught it first. A shape, elongated, jointed wrong, hunched on all fours, its body glowing faintly against the cold steel. Its head swiveled with insect-like speed.
eyes catching the emergency light reflecting red. It moved. Faster than anything human, it vaulted the catwalk, slamming into Corporal Vega. Both went crashing against the rail. Vega screamed, unloading rounds point blank into its chest. The sound was wet, not bone, not muscle, like shooting into packed snow. Torres fired, O'Neill too. The thing shrieked, its voice layered, not one sound but many, vibrating through the air like static. It jerked back, limbs flailing unnaturally, then scuttled upward, vanishing into the pipes overhead.
Vega lay on the deck, chest heaving, armor plate cracked but intact. His hands shook as he reloaded. Not human. Not anything. They regrouped fast. The hum from below had grown into a low-frequency roar, vibrating in their teeth. Pipes rattled. The fissures in the walls pulsed faintly, like veins filled with light. Then the power core chamber ahead erupted in sparks. The reactor, massive, ringed with spinning turbines, glowed far too bright. Alarms wailed across the level. The resonance was deafening now, a constant droning chord. Over it, faintly, came words, whispers in a language that burrowed into the mind. The Rangers covered their ears. Torres fell to his knees, screaming, firing wildly at shadows. O'Neill grabbed him, shaking hard until he stopped. On the far wall, something vast shifted behind glass, a containment bay, its view slashed with frost and cracks. Inside, just visible through the haze, something writhed against its restraints. Long, thin, pale. Too many joints. Its mouth, or mouths, opened, pressing against the glass. The whispers grew louder. The glass cracked. Harlow's voice cut through, steady but raw. "We're done here. Next level. Move!" As they backed toward the stairwell, the whispers followed, growing clearer, closer. Each ranger swore the words were different, spoken directly to them in voices of lost family, old lovers, friends long dead. And as they descended further, the last thing they heard was the sound of the containment glass finally giving way. The stairwell door slammed shut behind them, sealing floor 3 above in a chorus of alarms and groaning steel. The air was thicker here, oppressive, every breath hot and humid, carrying a faint copper tang. Floor 4 spread out in a maze of corridors, containment cells on one side, observation rooms on the other. Thick glass partitions, reinforced steel doors, and rows of glowing monitors. But the monitors showed nothing now, just static or looping video. Faces of staff staring blankly into cameras, repeating the same phrase on mute. The Rangers pressed forward, flashlights cutting arcs through the bloom. The first cell they passed was empty, but the frost on the glass wasn't from the outside. It was smeared from within, a dense film of ice and condensation, as though something had breathed on it for hours. The next cell wasn't empty. Something slumped in the corner, thin, pale skin stretched taut across a too-long frame. Its chest rose and fell in shallow motions. When Torres whispered, "Alive," the thing's head snapped up. Its eyes weren't human, too wide, too black, like holes punched into its skull. The jaw opened, unhinged, and a voice poured out, not its own, but overlapping dozens of voices at once. A woman crying, a child laughing, a man shouting for help. The glass vibrated, then cracked. "Move!" Harlow barked, pushing them forward. The testing chamber was worse. Long tables, restraints, shredded. Strange machines stood silent, massive tuning fork constructs humming faintly even without power, resonating with the same frequency they had heard below. On one table lay a uniform torn to ribbons, the name tag still attached. The base security officer. The gurney around it was bent outward, steel twisted as though something inside had forced its way free. The hum rose suddenly. Every monitor in the observation room blinked to life. Not static now, but images. The Rangers themselves, caught in grainy black and white, from impossible angles, above, behind, even inside their own helmets. Then the screens shifted. Each Ranger saw themselves, but not as they were, dead. Throats slit, eyes black, blood soaking the floor. The images twitched and looped, jerking with interference. Torres fired his rifle, shattering one of the screens. The others cut out instantly. The whispers came again, closer now, from the ventilation shafts. Something slammed into the ductwork above. A shadow slid through the grating, long arms hooked with talons. Another thud. Another. Then the vents burst open. 3 of them poured out, tall, pale, impossibly thin, limbs folding and snapping as they hit the floor. Their mouths opened, overlapping voices spilling out like broken radios. The Rangers opened fire. The room lit with muzzle flashes, deafening bursts. One creature collapsed in a spray of black ichor, but the other 2 moved with unnatural speed, weaving between rounds, screeching. One lunged for O'Neill, slamming him against the wall. His armor held, but the impact rattled his bones. He jammed his sidearm into its chest and fired until it slumped, spasming. The 3rd creature scuttled up the wall, vanishing into shadow before Harlow's shots caught it. The whispers retreated with it, fading into the dark. Heavy breathing filled the silence. Torres was shaking, muttering, "We're not making it out. We're not." "Shut it!" Vega snapped, though his own hands trembled. "We hold it together."
They regrouped. Blood smeared across the floor, black and thick, seeping into the cracks. The hum below had grown into a constant vibration, rattling the glass, shaking dust from the ceiling. Harlow steadied himself, forcing calm into his tone. "Next level. Whatever this is, it started there. We finish it there." They moved as one, battered and bloodied, toward the final stairwell. The whispers chased them, crawling across the walls, echoing in their helmets, until it was impossible to tell what was real. And as they reached the landing, a faint draft of air rose from below, warm, wet, alive. The dig site awaited. The final stairwell ended in a heavy blast door, dented inward from the other side. Heat radiated through the steel, a low thrumming pulse that made the Rangers' bones ache. Harlow gave the signal. O'Neill wired the panel, sparks showering. With a grinding protest, the door slid open. The dig site sprawled before them. It was enormous, an underground cavern carved from the glacier, reinforced with scaffolding and floodlights. But most of the lights were shattered, dangling like broken bones. In their pale glow, the Rangers saw the pit, a gaping wound in the ice, its edges jagged, descending into blackness. Around it, drilling rigs lay toppled, machinery twisted, and from the pit itself, steam and light rose in pulses, each one accompanied by that low, resonant hum. At the center of it all loomed something impossible. Half buried in the ice, a structure jutted out. Metallic yet organic, its surface ridged and glistening like living armor. It was not built. It had grown. Veins of frost spread outward from it, spiderwebbing across the cavern walls. The whispers were deafening now, not in their ears but in their minds. "Jesus Christ," Vega breathed. They were digging up this. Harlow didn't answer. Movement rippled along the scaffolding. Shapes pulled free from the shadows. Dozens of them, long-limbed and pale, crawling down walls and ceilings like insects. Their mouths opened in perfect unison, and the voices became one, an echo of words in a language none of them knew, yet all somehow understood. "Join us." The swarm descended. The Rangers opened fire, muzzles flaring,
Bullets shredded bodies, black ichor spraying, but for every one that fell, 3 more emerged. The cavern became chaos, gunfire, shrieking voices, claws scraping steel. Torres was dragged screaming into the dark before anyone could fire. Vega unloaded his rifle until the barrel smoked, screaming curses before a talon ripped across his chest, hurling him into the pit's edge. Harlow's orders were drowned in noise, but O'Neill heard enough. He pointed to the reactor core feeds lining the cavern, still humming with stolen power. "We blow it!" "Only way." Harlow nodded, eyes hard. "Set it." "Now!" O'Neill sprinted across the catwalks, creatures snapping at his heels. He jammed charges into the reactor conduits, sparks raining. His final transmission cracked over comms. "You've got 5 minutes. Get topside." The team pulled back. Vega stumbled, bleeding, shoving Harlow toward the exit. "Go! Don't waste me." He turned and charged the swarm, screaming, rifle blazing until they swallowed him whole. Harlow, O'Neill, and the last 2 Rangers fought their way up the stairwell, whispers chasing them like rising floodwater. The ground shook violently now, the core overloading, the dig site collapsing. The last glimpse through the blast door was of the swarm turning their heads upward in unison, eyes glowing like embers in the dark, before the cavern erupted in fire and ice. The survivors staggered onto the surface. Snow whipped around them, the radar tower groaning overhead. Behind them, a muffled roar shook the earth as the dig site imploded. Steam and fire belched upward from cracks in the runway, the facility shuddering as if in its death throes. The emergency beacon crackled alive again, though no one had touched it. The signal repeated over and over. Fort Kestrel, distress signal. Immediate assistance required. The Rangers froze. That wasn't their message. Harlow raised his eyes to the horizon. Through the storm, in the gray light of dawn, something vast shifted in the clouds above the glacier. Too big, too wrong, its shape flickering like it wasn't entirely there. The whispers carried on the wind. "We are already free." The snowstorm swallowed the ruins of Fort Kestrel, and the official reports would bury the truth deeper than the ice ever could. The Rangers who returned would never speak of what they saw, and those who didn't, their names wouldn't even make it onto the books. But some signals never die. Some whispers never fade. And if you ever find yourself in the frozen silence of Alaska, and your radio begins to hum with voices that shouldn't be there, remember Fort Kestrel and turn back. Because down in the dark, beneath the glacier, something is still awake. If you enjoyed this descent into horror, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Campfire Horror Stories. Hit the bell so you never miss when the next tale surfaces from the dark. And share this story with someone who loves the cold bite of a good nightmare. Together, we'll keep the fire burning against the dark.